Next episode, next story. Let's do this. He's cocky, closed off, and keeps everyone at an arm's length. But Windbreaker is slowly unfolding the story of a character who just might have the heart of a true hero, if he's willing to let others in. Today, we're talking about Sakura's growth, his relationships, and what it really takes to become someone worth following. Windbreaker is an anime that tells the story of Sakura, the new kid in town who is used to being ostracized. He wants to become the #1 fighter and sets his sights on Furin High. Within the school, Furin is the gang of delinquents who have been dubbed the protectors of the town. If you have seen Windbreaker, especially the current season that's airing right now, season 2, I want you to comment right now who your favorite character is. So the Windbreaker anime is based on the manga of the same name, Windbreaker, written and illustrated by Satoru Nii. Serialization began in Kodansha January 2021, and as of March 2025, there are 21 volumes. The anime premiered on April 5th, 2024, and season 2 premiered on April 3rd, 2025. It is licensed by Aniplex and produced by Cloverworks Studio. I would definitely categorize Windbreaker as a martial arts anime as far as the genre, with the subgenres being, of course, action and comedy as well. So it's going to be a little bit different than the anime reviews that I typically do for action, because I am going to group this so far by itself in martial arts. Windbreaker is set in modern day Japan in the town of Machoki, which is a fictional town at the Furin High.
A real weirdo.
That wasn't what I meant. You're not causing this place any problems.
So Windbreaker is about the guy named Sakura, who has always been ostracized because of his looks. He's got different color hair, different color eyes. So he's done a lot of fighting and defending himself growing up. So he takes on Furin High as where he is going to proclaim himself as taking the #1 spot. He wants to be the #1 fighter. And he even gets into a fight, really a brawl, on his first day in the town because he was defending someone who was getting, messed with. So Sakura has a lot to prove, and he is starting his journey early for coming for the top spot. But something that he struggles with is letting people in, because like I said, he's used to people picking at him, ostracizing him. So he has a very hard time adjusting to an environment where he is accepted and embraced for who he is as he is. Of course, Sakura is our main character, and he is the super hot-headed but super well-meaning young man who is new into this town, and he is different. He has black and white hair. He has 2 different color eyes, which, fun fact, is known as heterochromia iridum. That is the actual name for that condition where you have 2 color irises. We don't have his entire backstory yet, of course, because, plot. But we do see that he comes from an area where he was definitely ostracized just because of how he looks.
He started about his hair.
His eyes are even worse. He's a walking plague. Disgusting.
And he kind of wears that as a chip on his shoulder, unfortunately. So when he gets to Makochi, he is very reluctant to open up to people, and he's actually kind of surprised that people are not seeing him as the monster that everybody else back home saw him as.
I don't need anyone, and I don't want anything from them either. You got it.
So he comes in proclaiming that he's going to take the #1 spot at Furin High, specifically within Furin, which again is the gang of delinquents who kind of protect the city and fight for the, for the citizens.
Story goes that there are fights every day, even New Year's or Open, and I'm gonna take the top spot.
He lets it be known that's why he's there, to take the #1 spot. And he's not afraid to say that. He says it to any and everybody. So about his character, he's very hot-headed. It does not take much for him to start yelling, to get mad, none of that. He doesn't back down even when he's outnumbered. We see that even on the first episode. He's stubborn. He does not want to get close to people, and he does not like to lose, which kind of most people can relate to. I know I can.
Let go.
And I especially hate the weak who mistakenly think they're strong.
I said let go.
He has strong goals. So again, his goal of wanting to be number one is, he's not faltering on that. That's definitely a very strong goal of his. He's competitive and encouraging at the same time. He leaves an impact on people. So in the first season, there is a tournament arc with the Shistoran. And during a lot of his classmates' fights, he actually says something that kind of changes the direction of their fight. So even from him having little outbursts and saying little things, he's still, having an effect on people. I like that he wants to be the strongest, and he isn't sold on being a hero from the very beginning. So I've mentioned this before. There are different types of main characters, especially in action animes. There are main characters who set out to be heroes, and then there are main characters who have, less noble ideals, right? They just want to be the strongest. They want to be the fastest. They want to have the most girls, whatever the case may be, because we are talking about teenage boys. But I like non-traditional main characters in the sense that their goal is not necessarily, to be a hero, to save everybody. Now we see Sakura step into that role as he grows, in being, more helpful and picking up his team and stuff, but that's not what he set out to do initially. He definitely has room to grow in his temperament a lot. If he truly wants to be number one, he can't be as hot-headed. He's got to, calm down before he reacts. And of course, he is very, very dreamy. I am going to be honest. I started watching Windbreaker because I actually went to Barnes & Noble and I saw the first volume of the manga in there. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is like a cutie. So I bought the manga and then I actually watched the show. So that is the reason why I watched the show.
How lovely of you to drop in on us, Nirei.
The next character I am going to get into are supporting characters now. And the first one is Nirei. Nirei is shaping up to be one of my favorite characters. And he's doing so because he reminds me a lot of Deku. He is quirky. He has a notebook where he takes notes on people he admires, people that he thinks is strong, and he has good intentions at heart. But we see from the beginning that he doesn't have the physical aptitude, but he has the mental aptitude. So, and in the beginning of My Hero Academia, Deku was in that same position. So I am super excited to see what Nirei's growth is going to be like. Like I said, he has the mental aptitude and the ambition, but he lacks the physical ability. So he's not a good fighter. He really doesn't fight at all. He tries though. He gives it his all and he wants to grow stronger. And when we first meet him, he's very flashy and just kind of over the top, but we quickly see that he is overcompensating, so that's where I believe his relationship with Sakura is going to come in to help him grow to not be seen as, somebody that's helpless or whatever. So I think he's a perfect character for Sakura because again, he's very calm, he's level-headed, and, he has that level of intelligence about him, even though he doesn't necessarily have the fighting skills. He becomes a vice class captain to work with Sakura, which I did mention for Sakura. He does end up being elected as the class captain, unbeknownst to him, and not at his request. So Nirei actually catches Sakura when he came off the stage in season 1 from his tournament fight. And if you have not seen my short yet, I do a short of tropes in anime, and one of them is the main character being caught. And I think that's a powerful thing to say that, this is a representation of how the people around the main character feel about them. And Nirei absolutely adores Sakura, even though Sakura's a hothead, even though Sakura came in wanting to take the number 1 spot, he still really cares and looks up to him. So that's important as well. And then another important moment between them is when Sakura, initially met Nirei, he told him he didn't think he was that lame. And that statement is something that we see Nirei reflect on even in this newest season, season 2.
You're already crap at fighting. Don't start crying. Makes you look weaker. But at least, I don't think you're that lame.
And last but not least, I believe he is developing plot armor very early on, and we are going to see him grow the closest to Sakura.
So you're Suo, right?
Yep. Or that's what everyone around here calls me.
The next supporting character I'm going to cover is Suo. Now, Suo is a very colorful person. His introduction, he seems so like moody and serious, and he's actually a jokester. He's pretty funny.
With that eye patch and those long tassel earrings? You must be
Leonardo DiCaprio, yep.
He's lighthearted. His fighting style is kind of elusive, so it looks like he's always on the defense, but really he's a step ahead of his opponent, and he's very strong. But he's, again, despite being that way, he's also very funny and personable. He is one of the first people to say that he believes that Sakura can actually take the #1 spot. So he starts to be convinced of that. He even starts saying things to Sakura like, you know, I'm going to have to work hard to keep up with you, even though in the beginning he's actually, in my opinion, physically a better fighter and stronger than Sakura is. But he sees, you know, the fire and the determination and the potential in Sakura, and he recognizes that early on. So he's very, very humble, in my opinion, and I have mixed feelings about, you know, whether humble is a good or bad thing, but in Suo's case, it's a good thing. And he's very selfless. He doesn't want to take the spotlight. He doesn't mind protecting those around him. And he also is elected as a vice captain for the class as well, along with Nirei. So it's a team of 3. They're going to be the big 3 for Windbreaker.
I'm gonna crush you!
The next supporting character we have is Sugishta. Sugishta initially attacks Sakura after Sakura says that he's there to take the #1 spot. Sugishta does not talk much. He usually is very moody, very serious. He's always frowning or pouting. Just one of those people. He doesn't seem like he's ever having a good day. I guess I could put it that way. But he is fiercely loyal to Umemiya, and he's devoted to him. And, you know, he's a very good fighter. He's very strong. He's feared by a lot of people. And you can see kind of his sense of rage that comes out when he's fighting. It's like, wow, okay. He's nothing like some of the other students for sure. I'm highlighting him because I think his rivalry with Sakura will provide significant character growth for both of them. That is why Sugishta is here. Umemiya is another colorful character in the sense that he's very serious, but he's also very playful, funny, and personable. However, when he means business, yeah, he's standing on business. So Umemiya is currently the leader of Furin, and he is very eccentric, very fun. But despite this, he commands respect, absolutely. He doesn't have to rule all the time with an iron fist. However, he still has enough command that he was able to stop Sakura right in his tracks, as hot-headed as he is.
Fighting is what I'm here for!
I won't say it again.
You know, he has a very untraditional fighting style as well. Don't get me wrong, he's a good fighter and he can fight with the best of them. But if you watch his fights in the Shistoran arc, when he fights against their captain, their leader, it almost looks as though he takes hits, right? So he's willing to take a hit if it can get through and communicate the message that he's trying to communicate. Because one thing Umemiya refers to fights as is a conversation. So he has a different way of conversing with others, and that initially confuses Sakura, but you know, he sees something in Sakura and he has an honest conversation with him and breaks down, you know, kind of what he sees. And he also believes in Sakura, and he makes it clear that, you know, he did not claw his way to the top. He did not fight his way to the top. The people around him believed in him and pushed him to the top. And I think that moment, even though he was not, that was a question that was asked of him by somebody else, but his answer spoke directly to Sakura. And that is the kind of mentorship and leadership I think that a lot of people need, even outside of, you know, a show. A lot of people need that kind of, leadership. And he believes in protecting his people and his team and not hanging anybody out to dry. So, he lets Sakura know the areas in which he's going to have to grow. And if he wants to be number one, he should take heed to that. His sister works at the cafe that the students visit a lot. They grew up in the same group home, and I'm actually going to be introducing her next.
My name's Kotoha Tachibana. Eat up.
What's with this lady? Why is she acting all friendly around me? Normally, people get freaked out. I mean, I just pummeled 5 guys in front of her.
Tachibana works at the Cafe Pathos, which is where a lot of the students frequent. Sakura is in there, seems like every episode. And she grew up with Umemiya in the same group home. So they refer to each other as brother and sister. And the very first episode, the whole reason that Sakura was fighting was because some guys were picking with Tachibana. One of the classmates say, don't ever mention that happened. And he doesn't understand it until he finds out that Tachibana, the girl he saved, is Umemiya's sister. So it would have been a whole big thing had Umemiya found out, that had happened to her.
We grew up in the same group home. That's why Ume refers to me as his sister.
I included her because she is actually going to be very important to Sakura's growth as well. She is really the first person to speak some kind of life into Sakura and tell him, and not really judge him like everybody else. He initially thought that she was gonna think he was a weirdo, and he was surprised that she was so welcoming and warming to him. So she has those moments where she, says powerful things to him, telling him, look up and face us. And when you do that, you'll find what you're looking for.
I'm going to look you straight in the eye. So please, do the same. Look up and face us. You'll find what you've been searching for.
They were going to get, some retribution from a middle schooler for a middle schooler. They were going to get some retribution for a middle schooler that had been ganged up on. And he was, just like, going off on the guy. And, she said, how about you try saying, leave it to me. So she's kind of softening him up. And he's receiving it. That's important as well, because it's not like she's trying and it's going unnoticed. He's actually receiving those seeds that she's planting into him. So she is going to be a very pivotal part in Sakura's growth. I do believe that. And, a lot of the things she tells him, they come right back full circle. So that is the bulk of the characters that I'm going to introduce just for this first review. There will be more as the show goes on, but I wanted to kind of cover my favorites and the ones that I think are most important for right now. My favorite moment of the show thus far is hearing Umemiya say that he did not claw his way to the top, but that the people around him believed in his ideals and his goals and his values, and they pushed him to the top. This is a pivotal moment and speech because prior to this, Sakura thought he had to take the number 1 spot. And then he learns that it's actually given by the people that you want to lead. If you're still watching this, I want you to comment right now what your favorite moment or scene of the show is thus far. For the genre focus, technically this is the first one of this type that I review because like I said, I am going to class this as a martial arts anime versus an action because I think action is not specific enough because this is different than, some other action shows. So despite my reluctance, I'm going to put it in its own category, which means I have nothing to compare it to right now. So I need, I need suggestions of things to watch. But for what it is, it's definitely plenty of fights. One thing I can say, they don't shy away from the fights. You are going to see fight. Even from the first episode, even the opening of season 2 has been, great brawling. So you're going to see one-on-one fights. You're going to see brawls. You're going to see tournaments. So definitely a lot of fighting. Different people have different fighting styles. So even though they're all, kind of clicked up together, we still see different people fight different ways. We do see a little infighting. We see it. We actually see it on the main character side as well as, some of the villain side, the antagonist side. So we get a good little mix of everything. So we get to learn how they fight individually as well as how they fight as a team. We get to see how they fight when they're protecting someone, and we get to see how they fight when, you know, they have free reign to just fight how they want to fight. I love the animation style as well as the soundtrack. Now, the soundtrack is unique because I don't think I've ever mentioned the soundtrack for anime before. However, there are a lot of moments that would not have been what they were if it was not for the soundtrack. And that was moving enough that I felt like I had to speak on it, because the buildup in some of the scenes went so well with the music. It made me rewind a couple of times. It made me go back because it was just that touching. So definitely could not have been done better. You know, they line up well with the climaxes of the episodes, with the climaxes of, you know, like the mini subplots. The soundtrack is just beautiful, beautiful. Stronger is the song that really hit hard in season 1, and that is by Ryo Takashi, Zachary Fitzgerald, and Foggy D. If you wanted to check that out, I found myself singing along, watching the show, not watching the show. Yeah, that's my song. But it makes the story more impactful when you consider, you know, how many people are fighting to protect and how many people are fighting to be stronger. You know, they're trying to protect people who may not be able to protect themselves, who may be weaker, or, you know, who just may not be fighters. So to be stronger for somebody is powerful, because Sakura can be strong for him. He can be strong for him because he's been ostracized, because he wants to be the number one. But if you want to be a leader, can you be strong for somebody else? Something to think about. The core theme. So the main theme in this anime, there's no surprise, is fighting, okay? So I would be remiss without saying that and pointing out the obvious, right? So Furin is not just fighting, though. They're actually taking on the task of protecting the people in their town, protecting the, you know, those around them who cannot or will not fight. So I see the fighting as, you know, being heroic, as well as just, you know, playing competitive. I fight better than you. I can beat you up. Like, you know, a little bit of both, which is nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. For the symbolism and deeper meaning, even though the show is about fighting, I do believe that there's always some type of symbolism or deeper meaning that we can find. For Windbreaker, three main things. I have three main things. The first one is, what kind of effect does finally being accepted after being ostracized for so long have on a person? So we see Sakura, who is, like I said, he's ostracized because of things out of his control. He cannot help his eye color. He cannot help his hair color. And he's a teenager in high school. Like, who is going to be dyeing their hair, you know, just to have one color hair? These are things that were out of his control, but he was ostracized for them. Everybody thought he was a freak. He was a monster. He was weird, you know, and then he gets to Mikochi and people are accepting of him. They're calling him bro, you know, they're being nice to him. So how do we deal with being in a positive situation after being in a toxic one for so long? So that's just food for thought. And he's not the only one. There are other characters in Windbreaker who come from similar backgrounds. So he's not the only person learning how to readjust to being around positivity. All right, so number 2, this is going to be a little bit controversial, but I think it needs to be said because, again, elephant in the room. So another thing I think a good comparison is gangs, right? So I know there's cultural differences between gangs in the US and gangs in Japan and organized crime or whatever, but I feel like, speaking as a Black person in the United States, I feel like when people talk about gangs, especially African American gangs, they omit or they legitimately don't know that a lot of these gangs were started, just about all of them were started to protect their neighborhoods. They were trying to protect their neighborhoods from police brutality, from, you know, Jim Crow, racism. It was not started, they did not all start to just be violent and do anything to anybody. Like, they were actually, in the beginning, they were started to protect their neighborhood. we actually can kind of see that, the roots of that in Windbreaker, because we have both Furin, their gang, and they're protecting their neighborhood by fighting. But then you see, like, when the Shistorin come in, they were protectors initially. And then when their leader got to the top, he just was like, yeah, I feel kind of empty, you know? And then it turned into something completely different. They started terrorizing people. So sometimes things have good intentions, and sometimes a few people go astray. But we can't always judge things through a narrow lens. Sometimes we got to see the whole story. So just something to think about. And finally, the power of kindness. That is probably the last symbolic thing. We have a few interactions. We can see how a few nice interactions with Sakura has already sparked a change in him. And he's already coming so far and starting to lose his tough exterior rather quickly. Windbreaker has been widely well received and praised. However, there is some feedback that Sakura's journey, you know, to the top is rather easy. His path to success is pretty easy, so it's kind of underwhelming. And I honestly get that. I get that. It is looking like it's going to be an easy road for him because he's already been elected, you know, captain of his class, and he just got there. So, you know, that's kind of a drawback. It was nominated for Best Action at the 9th Crunchyroll Anime Awards this year. And as of March 2022, the manga has sold over 1.2 million copies. If you aren't already, make sure you subscribe to my channel, turn on those notifications, and comment any anime that you want me to watch and review next. So for all animes, no matter how much I rant and rave about them, there's always things I don't like and things that I do like. So starting off with the dislikes, I don't think that Sakura has enough conflict in rising to the top. So I do agree with the feedback that's pretty consistent that his road to success has been very easy. He comes to the town as a newcomer and he's already the class captain. It's just like, I'm sure there was another student who could have done this at least this year and then maybe next year. But, you know, people are already falling in line to support him, and I guess you can't hate the player, you gotta hate the game, but I don't like it. I don't like the outcome of the Shistorin fights. So that whole tournament arc, I was expecting something different. So I'm going to tell you now to skip this chapter and go to the like section if you don't want to hear a spoiler. So if you're still here listening, I didn't like that everybody from Furin won. At least one person should have lost their fight. I feel like that's realistic. I feel like they should not have swept the tournament. So I didn't like that. I feel like that gave that kind of stuff gives people false confidence because somebody at the school should have lost. On to what I do like, and there's quite a few. I love the guidance and leadership of Umemiya. So that's right. My first like about this show is actually not about the main character. It is Umemiya because I think he has a great leadership style. You know, you see the difference in how he leads Furin versus, you know, how some of the other gangs lead. So definitely all 10s for that. I like the dynamic between Sakura and Nirei. That's going to be a very important friendship. It's a very funny friendship. It's a very genuine friendship, you know, and there was an opportunity Sakura had. He could have kicked Nirei while he was down, like I said earlier, but instead he told him, hey, you're not that lame, which it's kind of a backhanded compliment, but it was the best he could do, us knowing him, and he gets better. And even him saying that is something that Nirei is carrying around with him, and he wants to grow from that. The Furin dynamics are really amazing. So we see all kinds of personality types, and the important thing is that they all stick together. Sakura is the kind of hot-headed that I love. I prefer passion over everything. So even if it's expressed in maybe the wrong way, I still prefer you to have passion than to not have passion for anything that you're doing. And I like that Sakura doesn't start out wanting to be a hero. Like I said, I do prefer the non-traditional main characters who, you know, have silly, petty reasons for wanting to do what they do, but they don't necessarily want to just be a hero right out of the gate. There's nothing wrong with that. Everybody doesn't want to be a hero, but I like that he's growing and, you know, getting into that space as well. He's open to it, even though it's not what he initially set out to do. In conclusion, I love Windbreaker. I love the animation style. I love the soundtrack. I love the students. I love the fights. I love all the growth. I love the comedy. Again, this is the first anime that's traditional, you know, kind of fighting style versus just regular action. So I'm sure as I watch more animes, I'll have something to compare this to. But for right now, it's sitting at the #1 spot. So if you have any suggestions for martial arts fighting animes, I am all ears for them. For those looking for a show with a lot of action, I would recommend this to you. If you like a little more growth and resistance in the main character getting what they want, then this might not be the show for you, because it does come rather easy to Sakura. But otherwise, there's no shortage of fights. There's no shortage of action. So I would definitely recommend this one. When one arc ends, another one begins. See you next time.